For the bare necessities, the simple bare necessities.
There's not really a lot to say.
What do you mean by that?
Well, we've turned the mic on out of desperation.
We've been planning this episode for longer than most.
What do you mean planning?
Well, putting the pieces in place, like the Riddler.
Right.
Now, the thing about the Riddler is that he loved to set a kind of game. He loved to plan in advance, and you never get to see the planning phases. You only get to see the riddles in action. And like him, what's his name? It's something like John P. Uzzle or something. No, it's Edward Nigma.
Oh, yeah.
That's barely better than whatever
Sounds
I
quite
said.
offensive.
Edward Nigma, yeah, I guess it does.
P. Uzzle. Jonathan P. Uzzle.
Like Mr. E. Nigma before us, we have been laying the trap that is episode 128, welcome back to it, for quite some time.
You're sure about that? Episode 128, you want to put this in the
It might be
regular
127.5.
You want to put it in the regular canon?
We might be giving it the old man in 308 treatment.
The old 0.5, everyone can ignore this code. What is it? The Riddler from the comics? This, or is this the Riddler from the Batman game?
I only know him from the games,
where his riddles are actually just a big course you have to drive in your car.
Oh, it was just like he's left some question marks around. They're very rarely like
he left
cerebral.
Some question marks around and just did a kidnapping.
And you're like, well, okay, thanks.
The riddle here is, how do you get away with this name?
Yeah, they were not very like challenging intellectually for the Batman.
My first is in Uzzle, but not in Canoe.
It's a shame because he's the world's greatest detective. Batman, that is.
Yeah.
Very rarely.
Not Jonathan P. Uzzle.
No, he's top 5 though. Thank you for checking. Very rarely involved in anything that would constitute actual detective work.
No.
You can't see him in kind of Regency Poirot era.
No. Just turning up in a parlour.
Whether you can. Where's the knife?
I want to speak to the gardener. I want to know where he was on the night of the 24th.
Ooh, I see. New in this town, are we? I still haven't seen the John Malkovich's Poirot.
I saw the first episode.
Did you?
It was very odd.
Yeah,
I did want to see the rest.
You said it was dark and sexy.
Yeah, it was very full of sex.
From Poirot?
No, not yet. But
To
you got
Poirot?
That, you got that towards...
Near Poirot.
You got that feeling. The guy who played Gibbs in Pirates of the Caribbean was in it for 1 minute.
Gibbsy.
Yeah.
Wow, I wondered what happened to
Rupert
him.
Grint is in it.
Ronald Weasel.
In a very... it's always very jarring when he's in things. I think somehow
like
it's...
Thunderpants.
Somehow it's the least jarring.
Of the three, really?
The three, yeah. Well, because Daniel Radcliffe, bless him... Like he was the Harry Potter.
Yeah.
So you can't escape that no matter what you do. And he's done some really weird shit since in order to try.
Yeah, he used to fuck a horse on stage every day of the week.
And then he was the devil a bit.
That was good, that film.
And then he was a corpse, or he had a
corpse.
Yeah. So
Swiss Army Corpse, it's called, or something like that.
So Swiss Army Man, I think.
Yeah, much of a muchness.
So I think... he's really thought, in order to escape this, I've got to go full weird. But then he was also in Now You See Me Too, playing a not magician.
Whoops.
Then you're like, oh.
That's like when Elijah Wood turned up in Spy Kids 3D.
Emma Watson.
Yep.
Lovely.
Yeah, very talented Instagram presence.
Yep.
Where she publicises other people's books and political work. And her own, actually, to be fair.
Yeah. But
good activist.
Not an actor.
Not one that you'd go to immediately.
Pay to see.
She was all right in The Perks of Being a Wallflower, but maybe that's because the film's quite bad.
Very poor.
So, by contrast.
She brought it out. But
great
also,
in The Circle.
she's just herself. Like, there's no acting.
Sorry, no, she was doing an American accent for a good 40% of The Circle.
And that wasn't... She did it for the first 40% and then stopped. It was 40% of each word.
Yeah. And the way they kind of captured that, it's always a difficult job. And it was only recently that I'd really learnt that trailers are cut together by completely separate entities to the studio, which I still think is a weird
very
separation because it's such an important marketing piece. But the way that the Netflix team had cut together the trailer for The Circle was that in the 1 minute, 20 second runtime, for a minute and 16 seconds, she's like, hey, the name's Emma Watson. I'm here to fuck up Facebook, or whatever the plot was, which basically that was the plot. And then at the end, there was a guy who was like, it was a pretty cool film, and I think we talked about it before.
I remember saying this, yeah.
He's interviewing her, and he's like, Lennon or McCartney? And she's like, Lennon. And then they ask a bunch of questions like that, like Microsoft or Apple, things like that. Like very clever, very insightful personality.
Well, yeah, exactly. Good script writing as well.
Well, yeah, of course. And the last one is just something like, it's either a number, it's something, a really asinine question, and she just answers in the flattest, like, most heightened RP English accent. 14, my lord. And then the trailer, like, cuts out, and you're like, wow, this circle does all sorts of things.
She's all over the place in it. 1 minute she's top left,
crazy.
Next minute she's York.
It's very, very good.
Very odd.
Not a good film, though.
So I think he's the least jarring, because he just seems to be the most normal, I think.
Yeah, and the character of Ron is, not a hop, step and a jump from just a normal person.
Being someone.
Trundling around Magic Town.
Well, and I think, interestingly, that's because he was, out of the three, the only one who actually just was a wizard. So to him,
everything was just dull.
He was just like, it was just like going to school.
Yeah,
for him. It was barely even magical. The only difference for him was he had to learn history. But yeah, he's in it, and he was all right. He's like playing a sort of menacing figure.
Can he do menacing? Because I saw he had a mustache. And that set my teeth on.
That detracted. That was menacing in a sort of meta way.
A kind of psychosexual way.
Yeah. Malkovich was playing Poirot. He is playing sort of Poirot after he's like past it a bit, and no one really likes him anymore.
That seems to be like the start of every other Poirot.
Yeah, even the first.
You've got to wonder where the golden age was for Hercule.
There's a bit in it. I don't know if this is in the books because I haven't read very many of them. But where it turns out that after, for some reason, he was no longer allowed to solve crimes, or just stopped.
By who?
Well, I don't know.
The criminals all got together and said, "This is not fair, mate.
Come on, mate.
Come on, give us a year."
Was that he just used to do parlor games like your murder mystery night?
Really?
So, yeah, that he would like just go and do a fake murder mystery
hilarious.
At someone's house,
but
which is the ultimate like insult to
that's
Poirot.
So shit. Yeah, I'm sure that's not in the book.
So yeah, that was one of the things that was implied, that he'd just go to rich people's houses and pretend to solve a crime that hadn't actually happened.
That's so sad.
Yeah. He's got a bit of a Silas from the Da Vinci Code thing going on.
Nice.
And he otherwise just seems to be playing him as slightly mentally disabled.
Malkovich often brings that quality to performances.
Yeah.
It's
even when playing himself.
Yeah, especially, someone said. That's odd. And his accent was all right.
It was very odd. Like, as ever, all of the replies to any tweets about it on Twitter were divided between people saying, this was really good, like, I quite enjoyed it, it's very different. And other people going, no, he's an old doddery man.
Hashtag not my Poirot.
Yeah, literally, I think, saw that tweeted, and some quite venomously phrased ones as well. I can't remember her name, the woman who adapts them every year.
Yeah. That would be because she said that it was supposed to draw Brexit parallels.
Yeah.
And everyone was like, how dare you?
I mean, it sort of did, but I mean, not in the episode I saw. I mean, it was episode 1. So maybe that comes later.
I would hope so. Maybe the last episode is just called "And Then Poirot Solved Brexit."
The last episode is just about migrants crossing the channel in a big dinghy. And Poirot,
Captain Hastings is trying to fend them off. I say, Poirot, by Jove!
Poirot's like, let them in. In this weird accent that Malkovich was doing.
That was his Johnny English.
There was a very weird plot again that I don't know if it's from the books, where he was dyeing his beard because it had gone white.
Interesting.
So he was dyeing it black, and then whenever he was in a meeting, he kept embarrassing himself because it kept melting.
Oh, come on. What have they turned him into?
Honestly,
Clouseau.
Honestly, he was the biggest loser.
That's sad, I think, to see Poirot past his
then, every now and then he'd do a bit of crime solving.
Yeah,
and
was it good?
Oh, yeah.
The little grey cells?
Nice. Yeah, he was. But then, after that, he'd just sort of like trip, and everyone would go, "Whoa!"
Classic Hercule.
Drop a tray in the canteen.
Herky pirate.
So yeah, I mean, I would like to see the rest of it.
Okay, well, we'll watch
The
it. We'll make it
ABC
happen.
murders, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's a good story. The ABC murders. It's quite horrid.
Yeah, it was. It was very horrible.
Yeah, she's mad, isn't she?
It seemed to
old
be a
Agatha
little bit
Christie?
of slut shaming going on, though.
Really, because Poirot had been sleeping around.
No, because one of the women who got murdered
Yeah.
was just the most stereotypical hoe I've ever seen on the BBC.
Wow, have you written into points?
Yeah, they're not even going anymore. But no, in that her sister was like fat and ugly,
Right.
and she was slim and hot. And she's introduced by climbing into the bedroom, like up the, what do you call it?
Stairs?
No. The trellis outside.
Oh, right, okay.
And like after being on the town, drinking, dancing with men.
Wow, she sounds
was like
cool.
throwing off a proposal. She was like trying to fuck everyone.
Yeah.
When she met like the killer,
Yeah.
he was like posing as a stocking salesman, like as in women's stockings, not Christmas.
Do those two trades not overlap at all?
I'm
Because
afraid-
that seems
I'm
like
afraid not.
the ultimate seasonal coup for the stocking industry.
It's actually where they make all their money. The rest of the year is a loss.
A loss leader.
And she was like, she was like, oh, can I see? And he was like, yeah, here, have a look at this pair. So she put them on.
Yeah.
And then he was like,
No refunds.
He was like, you have to pay for them. And she went, I don't pay for anything. Like,
Wow.
just look at my legs and these. I'm way too hot for you. This is the closest you'll ever get to touching me, you virgin. And then walked
Wow.
away. She was still serving him breakfast. But like, that was her whole character, was just doing that and then like going off and trying to fuck someone
That's
else.
a big mood for 2019. That
Yeah,
character.
exactly. But I was just like,
Tag
is this
yourself.
Is this like anti-sexuality from the BBC?
No, because I
usual?
think the comeuppance is ultimately the murderers. So the slut shamer
right,
will
but
ultimately
she
be
did
shamed
then
by
get
Poirot's-
murdered by him a minute later.
Yeah, and then he in turn is going to get fucked up by old Melty Malkovich.
Oh, right, because he thought she was hot and he wants to save her and fuck her ghost in heaven.
No, Poirot doesn't care about things like that. Poirot
he only wants
only
to-
fell in love with one woman,
And that's the Virgin Mary.
and that was the
According
Mother
to this
Teresa. No, he fell in love in an episode, a book. I mean, one of those written episodes.
We now call them episodes. We used to call them books.
There's a whole like convoluted plot around this woman. I think she's a crimer. She's one of those
She's a
that does a crime.
criminal.
And he doesn't think she's done the crime because he's letting love.
Cloud his judgment.
Yeah. And then she gives him a box of chocolates that is also a badge. And then it's all fine.
What do you mean?
Yeah, no, don't worry.
A fucking huge badge on his chest.
Of like milk tray. That's why the lady loves
It's one of
milk
those
tray.
roses tins that you get at Christmas with the
It was
world's
one
biggest
Hershey's
drawing bin.
kiss. It was beautiful. So yeah, that's the Poirot catch up for the year.
Yeah, just in
Glad that
case you
we-
missed it all.
Pretty topical and seasonal.
What do you think the BBC, them doing a Poirot or just an Agatha Christie every year, it's getting a bit old hat,
Stop that. It's not.
like obviously they'll keep doing it, but what could they change to? What should they start adapting?
Well, I think they should carry on with Poirot, but he needs to be solving cybercrime. Poirot takes down the Internet Defence League.
Poirot, like someone just getting him in to see who is Thought Monster.
That would be good, I think, to see Poirot, because it would be like, wow, the old and the new. And when those intersect, you know you're in for a box office success.
And
that's why Bumblebee's doing so well.
who, like, let's make a list then of people who could play the modern Poirot.
Well, I'm going to be top of it, that's for sure.
Okay.
I've got the European ambiguity.
Assuming that you just
That I was going to take the
you were on
writing
the
job.
no, you were on the tube when they called and you just missed
well, they'd
it.
have waited.
You were obviously-
They'd probably have
no,
left a message.
but they tried. But then you never check your voicemail, so they just
true.
And you
And
you
they
just
didn't
missed
email.
it. No,
Why is that then?
they didn't have your email. You said you were too good for email.
I do say that all the time. Yeah, it's
You
cost me a lot
call,
of work.
You said it's like that urban legend. You said call me at this time, and if
Yeah.
I don't,
I'll
pick
jump
up, then
out of the
that's it, yeah.
13th floor window.
So assuming that through sheer happenstance you happen not to get the role,
Okay.
or just not be in it, they have to go with their second or third choice. Who do you think could play a modern Poirot?
I don't know the actor's name. Perhaps you will. but he plays a young Sheldon. So
So
I'm thinking 10 years' time, he's going to be too old for young Sheldon.
Right.
And too young for old Sheldon. And that is what we call the
Poirot
twilight
bracket.
years of an actor's career.
And that'd be interesting because then we could get Jim Parsons in to play sort of like flash forwards to when
Like the
Poirot's
ghost
very
of
old.
Poirot's future, the ghost of tomorrow's crime.
Where he becomes an extraordinarily lanky man.
Lanky, tall, Slenderman.
Yeah.
A kind of bean, a walking bean.
What about if we got someone like Hugh Edwards?
Hugh Edwards,
Yeah,
the
in-
newsreader.
Yeah, to play him.
Okay, well, tell me what he'd bring to
Well,
the
he's
role.
good at announcing things.
Yeah.
So when Poirot comes into the scene of the crime and he's like, oh, look at all this stuff over here.
Everyone's going to listen.
Yeah, Hugh Edwards doing it.
But I worry that too many people would listen and the murderer would instantly know what was up and be like, I'll just change a few things in the crime scene. Hugh Edwards is trained. He's a man who's trained to maintain unfaltering eye contact with a teleprompter.
Yeah.
So if he's with you, he's with you in a way that a murderer is going to sneak into his peripheral vision and just
Rob
drag
him.
the body out into a well, flip him off a few times, and that'll be
All
it.
right, okay, I see what you're saying. He's fourth choice, maybe.
Yeah, we need to go more outside the box, certainly. And it's for that reason that I'm leaning towards a kind of Pam Ferris type.
Right.
She recently portrayed Queen Victoria in the Holmes and Watson film that I hear is just exemplary.
Worst film apparently ever.
Yeah, apparently it's very, very bad.
Even though it seems to have a very, very good cast.
Yeah, because they just stole a bunch of people who are available.
Yeah.
Like, presumably, because Coogan's in it, Steve
Yeah.
Coogan. But that must just be because they were doing Stan and Ollie around
Yeah.
the same time, which conversely is supposed to be very good. Pam Ferris, though, Miss Trunchbull herself, how she's involved in the project is bemusing.
What do you think would be more controversial? A female Poirot?
Or a male Miss Trunchbull.
No, well, that we've already done that one.
Oh, yeah,
so.
Matilda the show.
or a black
Black Poirot.
Poirot.
I think, well, it depends who you're trying to controvert. Because if it were just like the general British public, then obviously the answer is a black Poirot because they're a bunch of racists.
Well, they are.
But they do also hate women, the British
Yeah,
public.
exactly. That's what I'm thinking.
I think the hate for minorities generally surpasses the hate for women in casting.
Okay, let me throw you a curveball. What about a trans Poirot?
Well, I think people would not know what to do with themselves. I think they'd have to bring back points of view as like a like
It's a
BBC,
point of view special.
24-hour
They
channel.
drag Dimbleby's corpse back onto Question Time just to deal with the uproar.
Yeah, I don't think it would go down well.
I honestly think there would be a riot. It wouldn't be anywhere in particular. It would just be everywhere a bit low key.
We should just reflect for a moment now that we're like several months into the timeline where Jodie Whittaker is Doctor Who, about how little difference it's made to anyone who thought that their world would be totally ruined by it.
It's interesting.
It's weird that anyone ever like that. If you could capture whatever it is that triggers that spark of initial outrage and bottle that energy and funnel it towards something productive, it would be like a limitless source of power, because the sheer like vitriol that day, that week.
I've often thought this about, I don't know, it's a certain, not just type of person, but type of mode and reaction that is specific to causes that aren't good, which is what like is a big problem. Like I've often thought about my dad, because he's not someone that you want to argue with, even when you know that he's wrong. I always thought he'd be a fantastic ally if he were if only he were doing it for good. But like even someone like Piers Morgan, you think if he believed good things, then it'd be
useful.
inordinately useful. But part of the reason that he is who he is that he doesn't think any good things.
You have to be fueled on that constant cycle of outrage. That means you probably are fundamentally wrong about something.
Yeah, at least one thing.
At least one thing, even if that is vegan sausage.
Have you managed to get your hands on one
No,
yet?
they're sold out everywhere.
That was a good idea.
They've got a big back order on the go.
That was a good business strat.
Yeah, they only made one. Turns out. Fed it to Piers Morgan. While his throat was otherwise engaged.
They made him eat it. They make you eat it.
Do they?
Yeah.
Is that part of the vegan agenda?
They make you eat it.
That's interesting. I can see why, like the meat folk, as I like to call them, that would upset them.
It does. We don't like
because you don't want to have a vegetable shoved anywhere
I don't want to have
unexpectedly. That, well, full stop. Why bother with it?
There's no need to prolong that sentence.
What about if Poirot was brought back as a musical, but here's the thing, it's disco, and it's like Poirot is at the centre of the disco movement, like he's friends with the Bee Gees, he's hanging out, he's living in LA maybe.
I was thinking even more controversial. It's like OG Poirot.
Right.
It's set as in the books, but it's still a disco musical. Like just out of nowhere, like the shining ball comes down, the lights go up.
And is Poirot, when we're casting, when I'm putting the call out, is he a dancer naturally, or is he like a very rigid and awkward figure to contrast with the disco setting?
Well, this is it, is that he's only a dancer when he's dancing.
Right.
Otherwise,
we swap him
he's
off.
a very clumsy... No, it's the same actor, but they've got to have the range.
That's a big range to ask for. Natural dancer and total mannequin.
Yeah, I want them to move like sort of, Brendan Gleeson when he's struggling back up the staircase in Bruges.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
I want them to move like that, but then suddenly they're Michael Flatley, like as soon as the music comes on.
That'd be good, I suppose. And how would he... Is that going to be like... The music obviously will have to serve some function that relates to the narrative. Are you thinking it's whenever there's a particular flash of ingenuity on the part of Poirot that he'd start a song?
I don't think he'd necessarily start a song, but his motif comes in underneath. Which is a lot harder when it's disco than just like generic, because like it's hard. It's very easy to have just a little nice bit of piano or a couple of strings in the background to a scene. But when you got while he's like, I think I know.
It is the butler. What did he see?
He'd have to have a sort of refrain, wouldn't he? Like his own little song that kind of repeats and develops.
Did you ever used to watch Poirot or similar mystery programming as a youth, as a child? I'm talking prepubescent.
Not lots, no.
I was exposed to...
Yeah, I assumed.
A great deal of tragedy in the form of television. My, I guess actually just mostly my grandma was like, Die Hard. The worse the murder, the more she's going to watch it, sort of vibe. And one time, I've blocked out so much of the surroundings to what happened in this memory, so I don't really know where I was, but it wasn't anyone's house that I've ever been to again.
Can I just say?
Yeah.
I just want to interrupt. Right?
Okay, go on.
Given that we're in a new age of the friendship.
Yeah.
It's about...
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's about like total
New
upfront
year, new
honesty.
us.
Yeah.
Okay, go on.
About talking to one another about our issues and our problems, and that's a later
be a short
episode.
conversation for me. Very short.
But all I want to say is that you like to think of yourself as super sane.
Well, I don't like to.
Have you said
Sometimes a label is thrust
previously,
upon you. It's like being
from your
crowned
own
king.
mouth? But whenever you talk about any of your life that happened before the age of 16, it's always in a very cinematically dark way. Like the whole room becomes shadow, but for a light on your face. It's always some sort of trauma or some sort of emotional labor you've had to go through. And I'm just wondering if you think it explains anything at all
I'm
about
such a
yourself.
happy-go-lucky, upbeat, whimsical, chap.
Normal
Yeah,
person.
well-adjusted.
Well, I can't stop people saying. People message me every day just to remind me.
Just remind Isaac that he's really knocking it out of the park with the whole adjustment thing.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that.
Well,
And
that's
just to plant the seed of something to think about.
It's the seed of doubt that you're planting, and I shan't be sowing it for I'm not a reaper of dismay.
I've already planted it, but you won't sow. Okay. Anyway, you don't remember where you were. It was in a stranger's house.
I have a feeling it was
kidnapped and forced
like a
to watch.
B&B or something. It was a very dingy room. I would say the size of a table twice. If that gives you... Picture just a table from your life. Now there are two of them.
Right.
Don't go picturing a giant table just to trick me.
Okay.
Or a tiny table for a mouse. Because I will not stand
I'm thinking
for it.
of this ovular table.
No, I'm talking like a dinner table sort
Like
of
our
thing.
table?
Yeah, like two of them. It's about that big. And I was there with, I think...
That's good content for anyone who's been in our living room.
Well, no, but that's what I'm saying. Like the platonic form of a table.
Okay.
If you were like playing The Sims and you got the standard table, times it by 2, and we're both in the same room right now. I don't know why we were there. I don't really remember who else was there.
Well, you were the victim of a crime, clearly. You're being held hostage.
It was a 6-month period that I don't remember much of. No, it was only a night, I think, which is why I'm confused as to where it was. I have to ask my mum for more details. Anyway, there was some sort of crime.
Her eyes glaze over. She asked you never to ask again.
There was a crime program. I think it was Jonathan Creek, which is traditionally very bad on TV.
Not very scary.
No, it was Jonathan Creek. For those who don't know, is an. I don't think they make it anymore, or they've brought it back for Christmas a few times.
It's Alan Davis
who
off of QI.
Yeah, he's the curly-haired sort of. I've never warmed to him, and it might be because
Apparently
of this.
He's an arsehole,
is he really?
Yeah.
Is that insider knowledge?
Yeah, you know our friend Maya.
Yeah.
I'm just going to use her name.
Subtle.
When she was working at that private nursery school.
Oh, yeah.
In wherever she was living.
He goes to nursery. Stupid
Still.
idiot man.
When they call him the idiot one on QI, they weren't taking the piss. That was just ableism.
So he's got a little kid there.
Yeah, and apparently he's an arsehole.
I've always...
Alan Davis, not the kid.
Yeah, well, both I expect. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Anyway, he was on TV, as I remember. And all that I remember of this is the snapshot of a woman called Zola, which, let me tell you, has put me off football Zola.
Yeah.
Gianfranco Zola.
He's lovely, though.
I'm terrified of him. Like, I have a visceral
Just in
reaction to
case.
his name. There was a tall woman called Zola. I think she was Russian. I think she was in disguise. And she's...
As a tall woman, or...
And all that happens is... She was 3 small women in a coat. All that I have memorised is someone opens a cupboard and out falls big dead Zola just on them.
Oh, no.
And I was terrified of cupboards, women, Russia,
Women.
height, ever since.
Magic.
And then it turns out I rewatched the episode years later. I found it somehow.
Yeah.
Or it might have just been on. And I found out that the way she dies, like, I think her death is probably like the first thing that sets up the episode.
Yeah.
And then it's like, ooh, how did she get into this cupboard that no one had opened in like a random place? And the answer to the riddle is that she was just walking along. It's actually more horrific than if she'd been murdered in many ways. She's walking along and a brick just falls out of the sky and hits her on the head and causes some sort of slow brain bleed. That means that when she gets in the cupboard, she dies.
What do you mean when she gets... Don't say
Look,
that.
I don't remember
That
every
itself
detail.
is surely still a symptom of the brain bleed.
No,
Don't be like, every day you wake up, you brush your teeth,
You walk down the street.
you clamber into the old
Full
cupboard,
body cupboard. No, I
and you
think
just stay there to die.
there's probably another element where like she dies somewhere and then someone moves her to a cupboard just to get the clutter off the carpet.
Right.
But anyway, very scary.
I remember...
It scarred me.
Whenever I was younger, and I used to stay over at my nan's a lot, both when she lived in Hornchurch, which was like a little drive away from us, and then when she moved closer to Hockley, like where I lived in Essex, that there was always like something that would go on that would scare me. When she lived in Hornchurch, she lived very close to the church, and I used to get very, very frightened by the church bells, and I still hate church bells. For different reasons. I think they're just very boring.
What about nice ones though?
No, I don't like them still.
What about Quasimodo's ones?
Yeah, his are fine, but he's only got like 2 that just going bing
No,
bong.
I guess.
But yeah, I used to find them really frightening, and they would go like every hour or something.
They'll do that.
And then like every now and then there'd be a service or something. But it properly frightened me. I really, really hated them. And I used to kind of like get up and like look around because I was sure that it was, heralding the arrival of something terrible. But then in a kind of similar vein to your story of Zola, I do remember staying when she was living in the bungalow. And I would stay in her room and she'd sleep in the living room, which was very nice.
Yeah, that is nice.
So I was in this great big double bed, but there was, but there was sort of like the door out into the main sort of foyer, and then that went off into the living room. And I remember she was watching an episode of Casualty.
Oh no.
And I couldn't see any of it. So I could only hear it. And I think it was a particularly traumatic one. Every kind of medical show has to have an episode that's on site at a disaster.
Yeah.
And I think this was some sort of horrific car crash where they were having to cut someone out of a car and whatnot. And so all I could hear for like half an hour was just sirens and screaming and like people pleading and so I'm like, no, don't shoot him. Don't like
pull me out of my car. My leg's still in there.
And I was terrified. I was sort of cartoonishly afraid, like with the covers pulled up to my eyes, kind of like, oh God, what's this?
Did you not go out and ask her to turn it the hell off?
I was too terrified to go anywhere near it.
Did you think there might be a car crash under your bed if you got out?
Just waiting for me. No! I'd be found tire marks over my tiny dead
One of the most
face.
confusing deaths. You get Jonathan Creek in.
Yeah.
Finds a cupboard full of Zolas.
Turns out all these bricks fell off him.
It's bad, isn't it? Why do old people love horrible shit like that?
I don't know. Because when you were asking if I'd watched sort of crime stuff when I was younger, until you specified pre-pubescent, like the answer was obviously going to be yeah, because I used to go around to my nan's like twice a week and we would record everything, like all the different strands of CSI.
Midsummer Murders?
No, not the really boring ones.
Oh,
Criminal Minds. Used to love a bit of Criminal Minds and whatnot. Yeah, like we used to we would just binge and just watch all of them. Bit of NCIS, bit of Numbers. God, we loved Numbers. Like, but on just crime show after crime show after crime show.
Because old people hate crime.
Yeah, but it reinforces their idea that the world is terrifying and dangerous.
I guess so. And also because when you're old, you're nearly going to commit the ultimate crime, which is dying.
To die yourself.
Yeah, which God hates.
For which you will not forgive anyone in your life.
And you will never be forgiven.
I think as well, it's because they always have a strong, emotionally closed off male character who's a very safe pair of arms in which to be held, and who's always very nice to old people.
And do old people like to be held?
Yeah, they like to know that there are these sort of Gary Sinise-like figures there in the world.
I guess so.
I think it reassures them to know that he's out there.
Yeah, maybe.
Because I remember reading an interview with David Caruso, who plays the very, very, very insufferable Horatio Kane, is it?
Wow, naturalistic naming
in
there,
CSI
guys.
Miami, who's famous for the meme of like putting on, taking off the sunglasses, and doing a very terrible pun before the
Nice.
of the
intro.
Yeah, of the Who, isn't it? Mm-hmm. I remember reading an interview with him when the final series was premiering about how women just come up to him in the street and hug him because they're like, oh, you're like Horatio Kane, like it makes me feel safe.
Very like him.
Yeah.
We share a body and a mouth.
And a mind. Do you like, how many of the actors who play these really long running roles, at what point do they believe they are that person? After how many series?
2 minutes. I don't know. It depends on the actor, I suppose. Depends on how seriously they take themselves. I think there are some people who have a tendency to like latch on to any external identity that they can be offered. So someone like, I think Alan Davis probably does think he's Jonathan Creek. I mean, he doesn't think he is, but he probably thinks he shares a lot of the same, like, I'm a pretty insightful guy. I'd probably have found Zola in that cupboard in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't think David Suchet thinks he's Poirot very much.
No.
Because he's a bit more like thespian about it.
Yeah, although sometimes they're the worst for it.
Maybe.
Daniel Day-Lewis.
God, he thinks he's everyone, doesn't he?
I lost huge amounts of respect for Daniel Day-Lewis reading all of the cunty things he does in the name of acting.
Yeah.
Because he's very good.
He's very good.
But then when you find out that everyone on the set of Lincoln had to call him Mr. President. That didn't help him act in any way.
No,
there's no
understand.
way.
It's very helpful.
He used to like force people to carry him around the set of My Left Foot.
Yeah,
and you're
I
like,
remember that.
That's just being a dick. Was the character in My Left Foot a dick? Because that's the only way it
method
could have
acting
helped.
was a 24/7
Method acting,
idiot.
being an asshole.
Yeah, I know what you mean. For the Phantom Thread, he went and started like learning how to make dresses and things.
Yeah.
And also,
but that's all right. Like, I don't mind him doing that if he thinks
probably
that
made
help.
other people wear them, and they were probably very bad.
Oh yeah,
So he probably wasn't
that's where there's got to be a line. It's still got to be acted.
He made everyone call him Mr. Phantom Thread on set as well.
It's like that famous. What is it? It's Olivier, isn't it?
Yeah.
Talking to Dustin Hoffman, where he's like, he was supposed to be doing a scene where he'd been up for like 50 hours or
Yeah.
something, and so he tried staying awake and was like, I can't do it. And he was like, well, have you tried acting it?
You tried acting, darling. Yeah, that would be good.
I don't like Olivier, but he's
Deformed!
got a point.
He's got a good statue, though, on the South Bank, hasn't he?
He's got a nice statue.
He's only about 3 foot.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Was he a very
is it
diminutive
cast?
man? I don't know.
It's a cast of his
It's
body.
weird because it's too big to be like a tiny version.
Yeah.
But too small to be how big he actually was.
Yeah, it's very odd.
It's
looking.
like the young Sheldon, old Sheldon.
Oh, no.
Flat bang in the
He's
middle.
in the Twilight shell.
Yeah, absolutely it is. So there we go. That's our assorted thoughts on crime shows, on Poirot, on the Riddler as well.
They ended up being a theme, didn't they?
Yeah, God, themes will emerge, and that's the great thing. To anyone out there who's trying to create some great art in the year of our Lord 2019, don't go worrying about what, the mermaid signifies, what the volcano means. All of that stuff will just come out in hindsight. When you reread the book that you were going to write, Bob, the author, you'll find that there are all kinds of symbolism moments that emerge just organically as a pineapple out of the earth.
If someone in our listenership is writing a book.
And I'm not in it, I will flip the fuck out.
Well, you having said that, I feel what your answer to the question might be. But if they are writing a book, if they're out there, what's your one big thing that they must not do? It cannot be fail to include you.
Fuck. You've got me there.
Fail to not include me.
The one thing they must not do is use more than, I'm going to be generous and say 2 instances of a descriptive word before said. Anything that modifies said.
Or I'm going to say maximum 2 uses per 100 pages of any word other than said or asked.
Or no word there at
Yeah.
all. Because people can derive context.
Just believe.
I've got one more as well.
Okay.
Come up with a really good title for your book that you're writing, Bob, the author. Who, it's great that you listen, by the way.
Yeah,
thanks a lot. Shame you don't get in touch more, but I'm assuming you're probably busy with rewrites. Have a good title by all means, and it's going to be thematically relevant to the overall piece, and probably the characters are going to say it at some point, or it will be used, because often that will be you write like, oh, it was a real catch-22. And that is exactly how you come up with that one. Thank you very much. This is a story of mice and men.
Yeah.
That's another famous one. What went on with Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire? Asked McGonagall quizzically. Failing to adhere to our rule there, JK. But when you do reference the title in the text, even if you wrote the text before you chose that bit to be the title, I need you to show it to at least 1,000 people to get their feedback on, is this so annoying that I want to burn the whole book?
Yeah, there is nothing worse than reading that. I thought you were going to say, and my hope was going to be that it would be, come up with a great title for your book before you start writing it. Write the whole book and then bin whatever your title was.
Just
even
call
if
it
you
Lord of the
still
Rings.
think it was great, I promise you, it was
What if it was a
terrible.
very good pun, though? You're saying even then?
I'm saying especially then that they should do that. I'm going to say that my one tip is is like halfway through writing whatever it is, right? Just have a read of something you don't think is very good.
Yeah.
And just have a make sure that you're not doing it, because it's actually really, really easy. And what I'm saying is, like, don't go back and edit yet.
No,
because that is the biggest
death of
that is the death of it.
word.
That's how you never finish anything, like me. Like,
Same.
keep going to the end, but when you go back, do just make sure that you haven't done any of those things that you hate, because it's really tempting sometimes, in the name of doing something that's art, to do something that's very, very, very wanky, such as write your title somewhere randomly in the book with an exclamation mark after it, a character said.
Yeah.
Disappointingly. So just make sure that you're not falling into any of the pitfalls, because one, it will make your writing better, and two, it will avoid an embarrassing moment in the future when you tweet, God, hate it when an author does this, and someone who's read your book tweets you a picture of it, and you have to cry and delete your Twitter.
I think if I finished a novel and I thought, this is a good novel I've finished and I'm going to get it published, and then I went about that 25-year process of probable failure, I think I would like to pick a title that was so, like, on the scale of relevancy, so near to totally irrelevant to the book.
Definitely.
So primarily my motivation would be, I wonder what anyone will assume I'm like. With Catcher in the Rye, which I only read recently and we were talking about before, it's such a minimal, like, throwaway. It comes up twice, I think, in the whole book, and it's not even like metaphor that's particularly germane to the text as a whole. So,
and the whole point is that it's wrong.
And what's great about that is, think how many, like, school students have had to write essays or in which they've clutched at some straws to weave together some understanding of, well, in a way, he's always catching the rye of New York society.
He's catching rye, W-R-Y, smiles from people.
That's big.
Yeah.
So it'd be good to kind of force people to have to go through that hoop. And on that note,
you want to do a sort of Joycean, I'm writing this so that people will keep fighting over it sort of thing.
I think so.
Yeah, all right.
You got any book idea for this year? You going to write a book?
Yeah, I'm trying. But, like, again, my biggest problem, and it is a problem, I think, mainly with writing consistently. I can't spell for shit.
It's a hell of a hoop.
Is that because I don't write, I haven't been writing consistently. Whenever I come back to it, I'm like, okay, I'll read what I've got so far to kind of get back into it. And then instantly I'm like, God, I hate all this. And then I want to go back and change that or rewrite that, rather than just pressing forward and coming back and doing it. I have the opposite
problem. I think this might be a good point of contrast for us to consider in our future, which is that whenever I've written anything in the past, I like it a lot more than anything I would write now. So if I ever read something I wrote, even back to what are traditionally like the very cringy ages of writing stuff, like I've found like diary things that I wrote when I was like 14. I'm like, wow, that was like a lot nicer and truer and more sincere than anything I would come up with now. I feel like I'm getting further from it. Yeah.
You think the older you get, you think you've missed your chance to grab something?
No, not necessarily. I just think
you're just past it. You think 26 is it?
I think like that what you've got to do
person in the world
is just rediscover the person that you were by chipping away at all the porcelain around the gold Buddha statue.
And I've got to rediscover the person I will be.
Yeah, good luck.
Somewhere in the, like, 15 months between us, there's, like, the perfect artist. And we'll never be him.
Well, there we go, guys.
We'll just keep churning out this shine for 50 years.
See you in the next one.
2059. Any book idea?
Catcher in the
When I was 14.
Look, this has been an impromptu episode of That's a Shame. Not in the sense that we didn't know there'd be one on a Wednesday, because that's been the case for really quite some time. But in the sense that we sat here for a while.
This year it's 2 years of doing this show.
Wow.
That's disgusting.
It's got long teeth.
That's not my cake.
I think we should wrap up by saying that, it was an experimental episode. No, I'm not sorry. I think it's been okay. We'll see what people think.
Yeah.
We're going to do at some point soon, probably in January. I don't know what the date is. a show about what the show is going to be like. So we want to kind of reinvigorate, I hate to use the term, the whole thing.
I love that you sighed on the word reinvigorate.
Imbue with some new energy and love and passion.
Revitalise.
No, because we do still like doing the show. It's just what it is kind of changing a little bit. And who's listening to it is changing a little bit. Especially as we advertise it less. Especially as we put less effort into it. But no, 2019, new year, new show. All the same bits that you like. But we're going to be, I don't know, doing
some more bits
shit
that you really dislike.
just to keep
just
that
to
passion,
challenge you, you know.
To channel the outrage.
Exactly.
So yeah, look out for that. Until then, we've got some ways you can get in touch. tass@shame.city is one of the big ones. Send us your emails. If you're writing something, we'll have a read of it.
Yeah.
If you send it over to me, I'll write my own paragraph where just Isaac is like Hitchcock cameo, just walks past the action, handsome as you like.
And then if you send it to me, I'll make sure I delete his one. You could tweet at us, to us, for us, at That's a Shamecast.
That'd be good.
At Isaac BD for Isaac, at DE Delane for me.
We've got reviews. We love them.
We've had reviews. We've had a review last month.
No one likes iTunes. That's
true.
An eternal truth.
That's the name of the spin-off podcast we're going to do.
No one likes iTunes. Everybody loves Raymond. No one likes iTunes.
It should be a career goal to get a podcast to number 1 on iTunes that's called Nobody Likes iTunes.
I think you'd probably just get a protest podcast. We could probably do that.
Okay.
The podcast would just be get 10 people of minor repute to just say, I don't like iTunes. And then that would be it.
Rachel Riley's I don't like iTunes.
That'd be big. We understand iTunes is cumbersome and it's outdated and it's
terrible.
Poor. However, it does boost the show in quite a real but confusing way when people engage with it. So subscribe on iTunes, even if you don't use it. Review us on iTunes. That would be much appreciated. Because if people click on our show, because let's face it, we've got one hell of a cool dog with a party hat.
Goodness,
people will be clicking away. And we want them to see billions, and I mean billions of reviews. All of them 5 stars, all of them great. You can do that by clicking the link in the show notes or going to shame.city/review, or, just open iTunes, search That's a Shame. Can't be that much shit there, can there? Can there?
Oh, really can't.
I hope not. Word of mouth is best of mouth. That means tell a friend about the show. Lots of people are getting new smart speakers. You tell them, hey, smart speaker, play That's a Shame podcast. It will say, I don't know how to do that yet. And then they'll go on with their lives. Never the wiser. But if it does work, then they're in for quite a treat because we've got some good Bare Necessities music.
Oh, it's great. Right, it's free. So we keep claiming.
The elephant in the room, covered as he is in $1, is patreon.com/shamecity. If we provided even a slither of value, even a scale of value on the tapestry of snakeskin that makes up this workaday world, then we'd love you to repay us in kind. That doesn't have to be money, but money is one of the more tangible
it's
means.
the only way that we accept.
We offer bonus content that is 100% going to be there this year.
That's our number one shared resolution is we will fulfill all
every
of the Patreon goals.
Not including those that we've already missed.
No, we're not going to re-fulfill.
No, we're not crazy, but we are dedicated. And that dedication is hosted on patreon.com/shamecity. $1, $2, $1,000 a month. Whatever you can afford, anything would be much appreciated. It keeps the lights and indeed the heating on here at Shame Towers. Until the next one, I've been Isaac, you've been...
I've been Declan.
Keep on solving.
The bare necessities, the simple bare necessities. Forget about your worries and your strife. I mean the bare necessities, oh Mother Nature's recipes that bring the bare necessities of life. Wherever I the tree to make some honey just for me. The bare necessities of life will come to you. For the bare necessities, the simple bare necessities. Forget about your worries and your strife. I mean the bare necessities, oh Mother Nature's recipes that bring the bare necessities of life. Wherever I wander, wherever I roam, I couldn't be fonder, my new home. The bees are buzzing in the tree to make some honey just for me. The bare necessities of life will come to you. Necessities, the bare necessities, the bare necessities of life will come to you.